He's the big American spreading the word about Aussie rules football. And he's a Collingwood cult hero.
Great tackle by you-know-who, the big guy from Texas.
But he's had his fair share of ups and downs since being discovered by the Pies almost a decade ago. And he shares his journey next. Hello and welcome to Knockoffs, brought to you by Pepper Jack. I'm Richo, and today I've got a man who is all the way from Texas to Australia to a premiership at the Collingwood Football Club. Of course, I'm talking about Mason Cox. Mason, thanks for coming in today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Great to see you, mate.
Yes.
This looks a bit fancy for me. What do you got there?
Yes, we've got the French special.
Ooh.
I'm not really too sure. Are you a person to be able to catch things in your mouth?
No, I'm not.
No?
No,
We're going to do
go.
this though. 3, 2, 1.
Oh! Missed nearly. But that, mate, they're
Just gonna put that back for the next
unusual
guest.
looking cheeses there. I'll tell you that. That'll go good with the rare fine Pepper Jack down there.
Yes, it will. Nice wine, cheese, and a few biscuits, as
Yes.
you'd say here.
You're a wine man.
Yes, I am a wine
Lovely.
man. Shiraz, I think, is my go.
Excellent. We'll send you home with some today. Mate, before we get back to your journey, your injury. I've never seen a man come off the ground with more injuries than what you had from one incident. How have you pulled up from all of those?
Yeah, it was broken cheekbone, broken rib, messed up my hand, tore my MCL, also got knocked out and got a concussion at the same time.
This was all in the one incident?
All in one incident. So going up, being in the air, knocked unconscious, and then not really breaking my fall. And the big one was the MCL. Obviously a bit worried about the concussion stuff, as you do with today in football. But the MCL's kept me out for 7 or 8 weeks, and now kind of getting back to fighting fit, which is exciting.
You feeling good now?
Yeah, feeling really good.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You go into rehab, right? Like these things in rehab, it's cool to be able to see improvement. You know, like when the older you get in football, you know, the harder it is to get that 1% kind of improvement. Where with the rehab, you can definitely see a massive chunks every single week, which has been nice.
Absolutely, mate. Let's go back to the start. You're from Texas, Dallas, Texas.
Yep.
Tell us about growing up in Texas. What are your vivid memories?
Yeah, I had 2 older brothers, so we were a very competitive family. Played a lot of sport, played soccer growing up until I went off to university. But yeah, it was we were a very sporty family. We loved that. We loved to get out. We never had a pet or anything at the house. We had plenty of animals with 3 boys running around the house, and you know, I was very fortunate to have some amazing, supportive family, parents especially, who are still coming out to Australia and watching games now. So growing up, I was very fortunate to have the support I did.
It's a sport mad state, isn't it, Texas?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're sport mad here in Melbourne, but Texas is like that, right?
Yeah, you got the Dallas Cowboys, which is America's team, you know, for the NFL. You've got so many other sporting teams that are there that you know, make up such a large part, I feel like, of the sport industry. And you know, people from Texas just absolutely love their sport. So it's very similar to Melbourne. Very similar.
It is. So you get to Oklahoma State Uni. You went there more as a scholar than sport, right?
Yeah, so I stopped playing soccer and I went there to study mechanical engineering. So both my parents, mechanical
Straight
engineers.
over my head.
yeah, in one ear out the other. No, but I went there to study engineering. That was kind of my go. Like I kind of thought that I would go down that yellow brick path of, you know, going into the engineering field and being able to do that as a job kind of post going to high school, and got 3 years into it, and then this whole basketball thing kind of came out of nowhere, and a bit like AFL. I'd never really picked up a basketball before.
So how did that happen? Someone just see you on campus walking around? 6 foot 10?
Yeah, well, it's a weird story. So like the women's team asked me to help them out because there was a girl named Brittany Griner who's very famous in the WNBA. And she was playing at an opposition's university, and they needed someone to emulate her that was tall. So they asked me if I could come help out, you know, go and train with the women's team a bit here and there. And then when I was doing that, the men's team, you know, they train in the same facility. So they said, oh, who's that tall fellow over there? We're kind of in need of one of those. Any chance we can pinch him off you? And was fortunate enough, you know, I got a phone call randomly, and they said, look, do you want to start taking private jets and stuff around the country to go to different games and, you know, get some free clothes, which, you know, I was a broke college kid, so I was pretty excited about that. Free food and free clothes, I'd pretty much do anything for that. So, yeah, it was a great experience for me, and we flew all over the country and even flew internationally around the world and got to play some basketball games all over the place.
It's just ridiculous, American college sport, isn't it?
It's a different level. It's a different level. A lot of money in it. A lot of money.
So, mate, you go from there, you finish at Oklahoma State. How on earth did you end up at the Collingwood Football Club?
It's a long story, Richard. A lot of different things had to happen. I'll give you the short version.
I'll shorten
it. So, the AFL, I had no idea what it was. I thought it was the Arena Football
Had
League.
you heard of it at all?
Nah, not even crossed my desk.
Hadn't even heard of it,
No.
right.
I thought it was indoor NFL.
Right.
So the Arena Football League is what AFL was at that time in my mind. And I finished up university. Basketball was kind of closing up, and we got a random email to our media operations person at the university. He said, "Oh, these people want to talk to you. It's a thing called AFL." So we get onto Google. You do the Google stuff. You look up the YouTube stuff.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I was like, well, I'm a bit of a prick at times. I think people probably know that, right? So I like to have a bit of a biff, here and there. And I saw how much people were throwing haymakers and punching each other. And I was like, this is great. This is perfect. I
like that.
This is exactly what I want to do once I'm finished. So, I got to experience that. And then, I was intrigued and interested. And there was a combine in Los Angeles. They essentially said, look, all expenses paid, trip to LA. And I don't think
so. That was for college athletes in America?
Yeah, college athletes that were kind of at that point of graduating soon, and maybe had an opportunity to play overseas, but maybe would look at AFL as another avenue for their sporting career. And I took it as a free trip to Los Angeles. Like I said, I was a broke college kid, so if someone's going to give me a free flight to Los Angeles and pay for it all, I wasn't going to say no. So I went there, did really well, was the tallest person I think they'd ever kind of put to a combine. And had a decent jump and decent endurance and things like that. So they were intrigued, and they actually offered to fly me to Australia that night.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So free trip to LA turned into free trip to Australia, and I was like, how much further can we push this down the line to get some free stuff?
I did not know that. That's incredible.
Yeah. So they were like, no, come back with us. Come to the counter. We'll book you a flight back to Australia, and we'll explain what this AFL thing is.
So did you go to Collingwood and do some training there, and then they pick you up in the rookie draft? Is that what happened? Or?
The AFL kind of hosted me.
Right.
So I saw different teams. So there's 5 different teams that were interested. Collingwood obviously being one of them. And did a bit of a kick over here at Marvel, an empty stadium. I'd never been to Melbourne, never heard of it at that point, So I kind of rock up and I'm like, what is this place? What's going on? And trained there, and then teams kind of came and saw, and I got to do a couple days with each team and kind of decide which one I felt like I fit in the most. And was fortunate enough that Craig McRae, who's now the head coach,
he was
full circle moments.
Coach.
Yeah, he was a development coach, so I got along with him really well, and kind of thought, if I'm going to be spending obviously a lot of time not knowing what the sport was, trying to figure out all the basics, I'd probably want to get along very well with the person I'm going to be spending all this time with. So Craig and I got along really well, and he's a bit of a father figure for me here in Australia, and that was the start of the career.
So mate, clearly, it's a tough game to pick up, the intricacies of it, but probably was kicking the hardest part, I assume, or not?
Yeah, that was probably the hardest skill, I'd say. The rules was the one. I think the rules, like, umpires pointing the wrong way from like other sports and stuff kind of really did my head in. Like I was running the opposite direction a lot whenever I was in my early days. The whole kind of having to give the ball back to the person behind, and give it back to them. I was kind of like not a fan of that really early days. And then the whole jumper punching. Back whenever you could jumper punch, I was kind of took me back a bit.
It was about all you could do.
That was about all you could do, yeah, right. And you could get away with a little bit, you get a little bit higher. Nowadays you can't. So there was a little bit of a learning curve in that, but I think the skill stuff, like kicking was definitely the hardest. And then luckily as a ruckman, I feel like there's less you have to learn in movement around the field. Sometimes you can just follow your opponent a bit. So that kind of allowed me to still play at a high level, but not have to know the intricacies of every single thing you had to do.
Mate, so your debut on Anzac Day, that just incredible again, that you're debuting on probably the biggest home and away game that we have, or definitely it is. Yeah,
it was a unique experience. I was probably less than a year and a half of knowing the sport, and got the call up to go play your first game in front of 85,000 people, and if I'm being honest, I probably didn't even know all the rules still at that point. So it was still trying to figure it all out on the run. But kicked my first kick was the first goal, and that was kind of the start of this crazy journey that's been AFL. I've been so fortunate to be a part of, and it's pretty cool to have some of those people still involved in the club now. Like Darcy Moore was the person that kicked it to me. I'm obviously a captain now, and someone I've become friends with over the years. So it's been an amazing, almost 10 years now I've been here playing, so it's been an incredible journey.
I was there the night, I think I can call it a breakout game, the prelim final, 2018.
Yeah, people look past the Queen's birthday game, Neil Danaher Trophy. It's about the only trophy I've ever gotten in my life. So.
Look, I probably remember this game because I'm a Richmond supporter. Mate, you ripped Richmond apart that night. That night you must have walked off and gone, wow, I'm actually really can play this game.
Yeah, for sure. I think not only myself, I mean, Jordan DeGoey kicked 3 goals in that game too, and I think a lot of people looked at that game as the contested marks that I took in that sense, and obviously Richmond being such a powerhouse at the time, and I can't remember how many games they'd won straight in the MCG, but we weren't given much of a chance going into that game. I love an underdog story, So, it just seemed like one of those days where everything was clicking. The whole team's in flow state. And it was crazy to think that, after that we're going to have the experience as such a young team, I felt like at the time, to play in a grand final. I probably wasn't really knowing what to experience whenever it comes to that back in 2018. But it was an incredible, day to be able to play that and play so well. And I think people always kind of bring it back up to me, and ask questions about it and things like that. So it was probably, a lot of people wouldn't have picked me to do that well in that game, but it was an amazing experience, I think, for me in my career to kind of see what I was capable of.
So you had a low that next week. We'll go into the grand final that you win in a minute. But then, mate, after that 18 grand final, it was a bit of a dark time for you. You had the injuries to both your eyes that are very serious. You could have been blinded.
Yeah, I was blind for a little bit. Yeah, so I had essentially, I think it's now 5 or 6 surgeries I've had on my eyes. And at one point, I'd had surgeries on both my eyes at the same time. So I'd woken up, couldn't see, and you put full faith in the doctor at that point that something's going to come back and some kind of visual is going to come back.
So what timeline do they put on that when they tell you?
Oh, it's 2 weeks sitting on your back in a dark room, positioned for 45 minutes of every hour. So you could get up and you could go to the toilet and you had to go back into the position of laying on your back. So. Wow. That was a pretty dark time. I think, doing that, obviously being so far away from family and the home and everything else, it was not ideal. Probably, I could say the darkest moment in my career. I could probably comfortably say that. And losing one of your senses, like it's just one of those things you take for granted so much. And, I've been fortunate enough now that, everything kind of panned out and, I don't have the vision I had before, but I've got, enough to be happy with. And everyone knows I wear the glasses now and things like that. So it's a bit of a different look, but it is now essentially a medical thing to protect me from having to go through all that again and having to experience the lows of it.
Is it hard to adjust to the goggles? I imagine that they're not comfortable to play in.
No, they're not.
Early days.
It's a lot of R&D. So these people out in Colac, iSports that kind of make them and help me out. Like we've got custom stuff that we've done, and I've gone out there and they, put custom slits in them and all this kind of stuff. So there's one that's a bit darker than the other. Like the whole pair is actually very customized. Yeah. So I've been very fortunate to find them on my own and be able to kind of create this little connection with them, and they've helped me out so much in being able to get back out and play, because without them, to be honest, like I wouldn't be playing AFL still. So
well, it's great. Great that you can still play. Mate, you've experienced the highest, the grand final last year at Collingwood. What a year it was under Craig. Did you pinch yourself a little bit after that game? There's a great image of you sitting on the back of a ute. I think just having some time to yourself, looking around, you got the American flag draped on you, there's confetti everywhere.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
It's a bit of disbelief, I think, in not just that day, but I think the whole journey. Like I think I've probably got to that point where, there's certain times in my career I thought it was over and I didn't think it was going to happen. And then, had this resurgence to be able to play again under Craig and be able to get to that grand final again after losing in 2018. And you never knew if that experience would kind of come again. And I think it was probably about like halfway through the year, I kind of made this commitment to myself that after every game, you do a full 360 of the MCG and, you just soak it all in. You just never know if, you get an injury or something happens in your career and you may never play again. So you're like, I don't want to end this and go, I wish I would have done something. I want to say I was thankful for enjoying it while it happened. I was sitting on the back of the ute, staring at the cheer squad and everyone else going absolutely nuts and just soaking in the atmosphere of what just happened. I think, it happens so quickly and then you kind of almost move on to the next thing. And I kind of took that moment of my own just to kind of sit there and just look at the smiles on the fans' faces and everything else and just realize that you can have an amazing impact on people's lives for the better. And that's a memory I'll never forget. Yeah,
unbelievable. Collingwood fans loved it. There's no doubt about that, Mace. We're running out of time, but you are now an Australian citizen last year.
Yep.
What does that entail? It's a little test.
Oh, there is a little test. I want to give it to you, but I'm not going to embarrass you. Not going to embarrass you. I think most Australians would fail it, if I'm being honest with you.
I reckon they would.
It's a test you got to take. You have to be able to provide, proof of permanent residency, and then a few other things. It's almost a 5-6 year process.
Yeah. Have you got to live here for X amount of years first?
You got to live here, be employed. Right. So there's a few things that have to go with it. But yeah, it took a while, but something I'm very proud of. I think it's cool to be accepted by, you know, not only the people, but also the government side of it and how much you've given to others and be able to be accepted back from the Australian public. And it's a bit of a flex, I'm not going to lie, to rock up to immigration and go, which one do you want? Do you want the US or do you want the Aussie? It's a bit of a flex, which is cool. But yeah, that was a really meaningful experience for me. Collingwood put together an incredible ceremony at the MCG and got to do that, which was, you know, a cool experience to say, look, this is the reason I came. It's also the reason that, you know, I'm getting citizenship here. And
so do you plan on staying in Australia?
Yeah, I think so. We'll see kind of once the career finishes, what happens after that. Maybe I can take a job like yourself, you know, and be able to do this for a living, you know, who knows? But no, I've loved my experience here. I've been so fortunate in what I've been able to be a part of, and who knows what the future's going to hold.
You got to vote in an election too in the States in the
I do. Do you want to get into that? Do you want to deep dive into that, Richard?
That's about another 5 episodes worth of stuff.
That's 100%.
Mate, thanks for coming in, mate. There's a nice bottle of Pepper Jack. That's the Sangiovese there, but you got the fine. You got the fine Shiraz down there as well, mate. Thanks for coming in. Good luck.
Thanks for having me, mate.
Good luck. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
There you go. That's Knockoffs. What a story. Mason Cox. We'll be back again next time. We'll see you then.
Join me, Cal Toomey,
and me, Riley Beveridge,
every Wednesday on Gettable, the definitive source of everything you need to know for player movement, trade, free agency, draft, and contracts.
Watch Gettable every Wednesday or catch it as a podcast wherever you listen.